welcome back to the amazing series that we're on of elevating Black women in tech. And this is a podcast series powered by the Women in Tech Forum. And today I am your host. My name is Miriam Owusu, and I am a brand ambassador for the Women in Tech Forum and also a Women in Tech. So today we've got a really, really great discussion, and I'm also really keen to just delve further into it with our amazing guests who I'll allow to introduce shortly. But today's episode is titled More Than a Seat at the Table, Creating True Impact. So it's very much about how we can go beyond our roles in tech to really create that influence and that presence that we want. So I am delighted to be joined by the phenomenal Ezim. And I always like to say, I always think it's better for guests to introduce themselves because, yeah. So Ezim, thank you so much for joining us. And I guess it would be good to know a bit more about yourself and perhaps a fun fact.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Miriam. I am Ezim Ezea, and I have spent all of my career actually within talent acquisition, HR, and I absolutely loved it. The fun fact about me is that I actually thought I might become a fashion designer. I absolutely love sewing. I sew things on the side, but it wasn't meant to be my calling as a career. So, but I would not change my career for anything. I think it's such an impactful role. Sometimes I like to term talent acquisition professionals, recruiters as gatekeepers to organizations because they are the ones that literally are at the gates of the opportunities available and, who are they going to let through to the interview stages and, champion throughout and, essentially help to build an organization with great people. So, I love being a part of, such a meaningful part of people's lives and such an important part of an organization's, strategy.
Oh my goodness. We are so blessed with the presence of Ezim because many of you who may be on this, watching this podcast will also recognize wanting to apply for a job and getting into the brains of the recruitment side of things. And I think Ezim, with her extensive experience, will be able to give us a lot of insights into how this interlinks with the overall topic. And I love the fact that you wanted to be a fashion designer. Like, that is
Short-lived.
phenomenal. But super
Yeah.
excited to have you on Ezim. So I guess to start off with, just as a first question, what does true influence in tech look like to you?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's really important to understand what a seat at the table really means. And for me, it's about being included in spaces of influence. So, these are spaces where decisions are being made, policies are being shaped, voices actually carry a weight. It's more than just being visible, showing up, being there. It's really about having the power to contribute, challenge, and change things. A seat at the table for me is also about the access to opportunity as well. As I said before, as a talent acquisition partner, my seat at the table is really important because it's okay, who are we looking for and what do we really need, and really taking that to the market and bringing that back, championing that. So also thinking about resources and networks that historically exclude people of color like myself, especially Black women, and also tapping into those networks and essentially making sure that we're bringing people in. It's honestly, for me, it's about a true representation of your value. Not just a diversity checkbox, but it's the strategic, capable partner to the business. So for me, it's something that I personally believe is going to be an ongoing journey for us, because just because a company or somebody gives you a seat at the table, it does not mean that you automatically have a voice that's going to be heard. It also doesn't mean that you're automatically respected. It also doesn't mean that, the things that you suggest are going to be acted on. So having a seat at the table is definitely something that's going to be ongoing. But when you do have that seat, stay in it, because only yourself, through, I guess, some of the things that we'll probably touch on today, can remove yourself from that table as well. So, yeah.
Whew, I mean, that hit me. And I love all the points that you mentioned, and particularly with what you ended on with, like when you do have a seat, stay on it.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important because particularly for me as a woman, and even as a woman of color, like there's been times where I've been at certain tables or in certain rooms, and I've had that imposter syndrome where I've
Yes.
questioned whether I'm there. But
Yes.
then the moment I push that aside and I recognize I'm there for a reason,
Yeah.
and what can I do with this position, that's where you could really just make an impact, even if it's that 1%. And that could just be contributing to a meeting, like opening up. Like, so I think that's so significant, and that really touched me. So thank you. Thank you. So just to follow up to that, so how have you transitioned from having a seat at a table to actively shaping decisions?
Yeah. Ultimately, it's taking that beyond representation from presence to power. The power of that seat, everybody wants a seat at the table. So it's been, an ad for me in my role is about advocating for purposeful hiring, not just diversity metrics or meaningful roles and growth paths, but actually, why are we hiring this, and being really conscious and always bringing people back to that. So when we think about actively shaping decisions, for instance, I had a role I was recruiting for at one time, and it was for a manager position. And it wasn't a people manager position. It was just of someone who's at that level of, really being able to own a campaign and run with it. And I remember in the whole process, the manager was really, a really big advocate of really reflecting the audience in his team. And so having different voices at the table was super important to him. So that was already, an easy campaign for us to go and run and search for the right people. I think, ultimately there's sometimes a little bit of discomfort when it comes to the level of hiring, because I think once we found the most amazing person, it was like, oh, are they as good as this person internally? Should the level that we bring this person in be a little bit lower? And actually, in that moment was an important time for me to use my seat and really shape the decision at that point in time. The role wasn't changing from being a manager level, but the manager wanted to maybe bring the person in as a, coordinator to reflect their experience against others. And so actually that wasn't then going to give that person the right seat at the table. It wasn't going to allow them to do their job the most effectively, because people would, naturally see you as a little bit more junior, when actually you're still expected to run the campaigns and, make the influences XYZ. So, I think it's positions like that where it's about shaping the decision and really helping the manager to understand that, we need to bring this person in at the right level to enable them to do their best work. And, this person also happened to be somebody of color. So again, you've got that additional lens of, internal perception and internal voices, and making sure that this person really had the right seat at the table. And I think the other thing as well is sometimes managers will be flexible in finding the right person. And then when it comes to the crunch, everyone wanted somebody yesterday. And so, again, it's about using my position to really challenge them about whether we wait for the right person, whether that might be 3 months or, maybe 2 months or maybe even longer, depending on, whatever contract they might be on in their current workplace, or to just hire somebody who can start now and who we already know is not going to be the best person for the job. And, then in a few months' time, we will have that realized. And then, we might let them go, and then we're back at square one again, trying to hire again. And, I think sometimes that can ultimately, be quite costly for organizations. So this is just a few examples of kind of having a seat, especially within a recruitment role for me, and really using my seat to shape decisions that are in the best interest of the organization, but also advocating for the best person for the job, and making sure that, people see, the how amazing they are, essentially.
That is incredible. And this just gives me another insight or lens into what the recruitment process looks like. And I think it's so powerful how your voice was able to shape that journey. And I think one thing that I really took from that is you looked at it from both perspectives. Like, how can I serve the business that I'm working for to get the best candidate, but equally, how can I also set up this candidate for success?
Yeah.
Because a candidate could go in for the wrong role,
Yeah.
and then it's almost like they're failing from the outset.
Oh, for sure.
And
For sure. Yeah.
you've shown how it can be addressed throughout that recruitment process. So I love that, and I'm so glad that you were there, and you're continually there in the recruitment space to also just shape it and make
Yeah.
an impact.
Yeah, no, I love that. And, it's funny because sometimes in talent acquisition, we say we're not saving lives, but equally we are such an important part of people's lives, because how many years do we spend in our actual careers? So,
Yeah.
it's important to support people through that journey.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know the audience will be like, yes, there's finally like talent acquisition managers and seniors who are genuinely caring about the process.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I know even when I've been a candidate myself looking for a job, it's thinking whether the organization that you're applying to have that care and they're doing their thorough due diligence to really set all the candidates up for success. And I think where that is missed, you often find like a high staff turnover or a lack of engagement.
Yes.
Recruitment is very much linked to other metrics
Yes.
um, within the business. And I think, yeah, what you're showing is that if you do focus on it, it's a win-win for both
Definitely.
parties.
Definitely. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you, Ezim. And just in terms of your journey and your career journey, have you ever had a moment or have you ever felt tokenized in any way? And if so, how have you been able to shift that narrative?
Yeah. Yes, I have. I'd be lying if I said I haven't, but I really pride myself on being able to shift that because I value myself. And, um, I think for me, tokenism puts you in the room. True inclusion really gives you a voice and listens when you use it as well. And so it's important for me to have gauged that throughout my career. So anytime where I have felt like I've been a symbolic presence, not a meaningful participation, or I'm celebrated for being there but not really supported to thrive or lead, I pivot. And pivoting doesn't always mean that I've left that job and I've done something else. It means that I reduce my interactions in those spaces and I increase my interactions in the spaces where I'm not just a symbolic presence, or I am encouraged to thrive and my voice is heard. In other ways, I've done that, in order to create that true inclusion for me, is really thinking about, okay, what is my areas of expertise? Because quite often the reason why we feel tokenized is because we don't really know what our expertise is and what we bring to the table, and what's our unique perspective as well. So for me, it's something that I've constantly sort of crafted over the years. I am somebody who absolutely believes in inclusion, diversity, equity, but most importantly, I believe in action against that. So don't just talk to me about, wanting to diversify your team, whatever that might look like. Okay, what are we going to do? And at the end of the day, if I'm working with you as a partner, we've got to really bring that to life. So for me, understanding my expertise in that final action part has led me to really challenge managers in a good way, in a partnership way. And as a result of that, they have invited me in to their spaces. So, whether it's team meetings to hear a little bit more about what they do, and then that way I can be a little bit more informed, or, going out with them to networking events or, industry events, so that I can really understand what their world is. And then that way, when I'm adding my voice at the table, it's got a little bit more context to it. So, again, it's about, moving from being that token, you just show up, you soak it in, but actually thinking about, okay, what are the resources you need in order to really be able to voice an opinion? Thinking about sponsorship, who in the room believes in you? And if there are issues, then, for me, I've always lent on managers or colleagues, and I've gone to them and said, hey, I'm feeling like this, or I'm thinking this, and just bouncing ideas off them. And then when I eventually do need to say what I will have to say, I know that there's a little bit more weight behind it, and I've got support behind me as well. So yeah, I have felt tokenized. And, that was really more so at the very early stages of my career. Now that I know how I can really be impactful to businesses, I really focus on that now. So yeah.
I love that. I love that. And I love the fact that you changed what could have been a negative experience
Yeah.
and shifted it into something so positive. And I think I loved what you said about, like, you know, equity and diversity and inclusion is one thing, but the action point is really key.
Yeah.
But in order to sometimes take action, you need insights, you need that context, and
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't exist in a vacuum of those from those backgrounds,
Yeah.
right? It may require you to step out of that
Yeah.
and see a different perspective and
Yeah.
just come together to think of a bigger picture of how can we work together irrespective of what background you come from, in order to really just address this mission of creating EDI in the
Yeah.
most impactful way. So that's so good. Um, thank you, thank you. And in terms of like your position as a Black woman in tech, so how have you leveraged it to uplift others? I know you've touched on a few things in terms
Yeah.
of like candidates and how you can make them successful. But yeah, have you got some other great examples that we
Yeah.
could look at?
Yes, I think, yeah, to your point, maybe outside of candidates, maybe those I'm working with already or those that I know generally. I think one of the important things has been for me to think about what's the legacy and long-term change that I want to see. I am a Black woman. I'm also a parent as well. And so what I find in order to sort of uplift others, I've actually joined some ERG groups within the organizations I've worked with. So I've joined, Black at groups, I've joined the women at groups, I've joined the parent at groups as well. And I think what that helps to do is to understand the experiences I'm having in the workplace and how that mirrors with other people's, or how everybody else is maybe experiencing it, and helping to gauge or temper how I might see my challenges, and also foster some of those trusts. And then from there, I've been able to find mentors myself or people I can go to. And then equally, I've then opened myself up to being somebody that people can come and talk to. When you do join these smaller groups, it becomes a little bit more intimate. You get to know people a little bit more. So you can actually, be someone that they can come and talk to and say, hey, this is happening. What's your thoughts? Have you experienced it? So, I think that for me has been such a powerful tool, the ERGs in organizations, to find support for myself, and also then to be able to bring others up as well. I think also just thinking about cultivating impact in lifting others. So that mentorship, sponsorship, when I've met people in the organization who, they might want to go for promotion or they're doing great work, I speak very highly of them. Where there's kudos to be given, like I give those kudos. And I think it's always important to really recognize people when you can, because just as you're talking positively about them in spaces that they're not in, hopefully if you're a positive influence in their life, they also talk positively about you. And I think that's where that sponsorship comes from. Beyond mentorship, it's who's sponsoring you outside of the rooms that you're in. And then thinking about networking as well, and connecting people. So for those who might be looking to get into particular industries or particular functions within organizations. As a recruiter, I've worked, with lots of different functions in organizations. So not only do I, share my advice, but actually quite often I'm like, hey, okay, I'll connect you with this person.
Mm.
And that way, I'm helping to lift them up through expertise, by somebody who is actually an expert in that field, being able to give them a little bit more guidance than just, my level of context that I have of that industry. So those are some of the things that I do to kind of lift others up, sharing my networks, being a part of the ERG groups, and, making myself available, building strong alliances, across departments and also all levels, so that you can then leverage those relationships when you need to, whether it's, to uplift somebody else or to talk about somebody else positively, to, support their career progression. So, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that is so incredible, particularly with what you were saying around the ERG groups, like being proactive and joining those communities.
yeah,
And for the audience, just generally, like if you do have ERG groups within your organizations, whether it be a parenting one, do join, because it's
yeah,
such a intimate way to get to know all sorts of people within the business, and you can really build these great relationships, which is
yeah,
important when it comes to career development and
yeah,
progression. And as you said, Azim, I mean, you're going beyond that. So when you're in those kind of groups, you're making yourself available. So if there's someone who wants to ask a particular thing, they could ask in confidence, rather than thinking, when you come out of that room, I can never approach the talent acquisition
exactly. Yeah,
partner. So that's really great. And I really loved your point about sponsorship. Like this is so important for anyone, especially women in their career journey, like building and cultivating those relationships where people, not just those within your personal network, believe in your journey, but
yeah,
those also within your professional network believe in your journey.
yeah,
And when you're not in the room, they could put you forward.
yeah,
And I think some roles, and you could probably speak to this more about from a recruiter's perspective, but it does require that internal voice,
yeah,
other than your own or your managers, to
right.
be able to essentially advocate for you for a
Yes,
particular position. And I think that's
absolutely.
something that's often overlooked. And even I'm understanding now in my journey, like have sponsors, build genuine
Yeah,
relationships, not just for a transaction because you want to
no,
get to the next position, but you never know where that one relationship could take you in your life. So that's so
absolutely.
powerful.
Absolutely. Even when I think about that, I went to a networking event maybe like but maybe about 10 years ago. And I met this recruiter there, and we just hit it off at the networking event. And we never met up again. And like 5 years later, he reached out to me on LinkedIn and he said, oh, I have an amazing opportunity for you. And I just thought to myself, you remembered me from our initial interaction. And, that led me to one of the roles I have had on in my career. And I absolutely loved it. And I think that interaction just reminded me that you can meet the person that's going to impact your life at any point in your career. And so it's so important to just stay conscious of that, from a career perspective. Equally, I've had promotions in several jobs I've had, and they've been promotions that I've seen sometimes, and I've thought to myself, oh, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to, secure that, again, that imposter syndrome. I'm very happy in what I'm doing. I don't need it. But then, my managers or somebody else who's in the room while these promotions are being discussed has said, no, actually, Ezim is ready for this. And she has done this. And, then, when I've been spoken to about it by, the person hiring, I've, I have felt their belief in me.
Mm.
And that has, that reinforced actually, yes, I am good at what I'm doing. Not just good, but I'm great at what I'm doing. People notice it. And people are talking about me positively. Maybe there's some negative conversations in other spaces, but generally, there are people who are advocating for me. And that's a really great feeling to have. And so the way that I've received it and seen it play out in my career, I'm such a big advocate of it for others that I see, who could be elevated, whether it's bringing them into organizations or, giving them access to more information or supporting their promotion in organizations as well. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow, wow. And the fact that that networking interaction circled back 5 years on
I know.
was testament to how you made that person feel.
Yeah.
And I think that's something to just emphasize on
Yeah.
for just not only us, but for the audience to recognize that one interaction could change the trajectory of your life. So
Absolutely.
really appreciate every moment you have in life. And if you can treat someone nicely, or if you can just have a positive, genuine interaction with someone,
Yeah.
you never know where that could lead. And the fact that it led to a job, like, wow, wow. And just a final point to add to that, like I looked at a stat a few months ago and it literally said 60 to 70% of jobs on average are found through networking.
Yeah.
And
I believe that. I've seen it. Yeah.
so it's about really ensuring that when you're networking and making an impact in that space and not taking it lightly. So yeah, the fact that you're saying you've seen it and you believe it, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's great, and congratulations on your career journey. So perfect. And just moving on to the next question. So if you could change one thing about the tech culture in general, what would it be?
Um, Again, thinking about it from, a Black woman's lens, I think I would eliminate the need to constantly prove ourselves to be seen as capable. Too often for me, I think Black women in the tech carry the weight of being excellent just to be considered equal. We have to over deliver, outperform, over, extend ourselves just to receive the same baseline recognition others get with ease. So for me, it's really about, that's one thing I would eliminate within the culture. Changing that essentially would mean normalizing our presence. So we're not the only in the room, so normalizing that and creating psychological safety as well. I think sometimes we talk about that and we're like, okay, what does that mean? And I think it's where we can just show up fully, no code switching or shrinking ourselves to fit in. I think this particular, otherwise known as maybe imposter syndrome, I felt that, a little bit earlier on in my career and thinking, oh, I have to, maybe wear my hair a certain way, or I have to dress a certain way, XYZ. I was never, untidy in that sense, but, you kind of look around and you want to almost copy and paste what you see, forgetting that you are a valuable and unique contribution in that space. And actually, you've been hired sometimes to bring your uniqueness into the organization. So, I think the other thing as well is about building cultures that trust our expertise, not question
Mm.
it. Listening without defensiveness as well. When we speak on bias or inequality, or, thinking about our lived experience, like, why does that always have to be challenged? Why does there need to be a defense about it? Our lived experiences are our lived experiences. So, so I think for me, those are some of the things I would love to see change more broadly in organizations. I have to say, I have worked with some really great organizations where, my presence has been normalized and I haven't necessarily felt, you know, um, like a token, or that the culture didn't accept me, or that I didn't belong. So, but I do know of others that, this is how it is in their organizations. And yeah, that's not great considering how many hours we spend at work together. So yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. And I mean, shout out to those organizations that you have worked with who show that they're here to create that
Yeah.
safety net for women and for Black women in particular. And I think, like, I'm just casting my mind back to my earlier days of my career, even though I look about 20. But there were times where I was like, okay, can I actually wear my hair in an afro
Yeah.
because I was worried of how I was being perceived. Would people take me seriously? And it was all of these niggling thoughts and doubts. And I love what you said about it's really about just being your essentially your true authentic self and
Yes.
being in an environment that embraces you
Yes.
fully, your experiences, your input, how you bring yourself to work, because ultimately that's when you will get employees working the best,
Yes.
at their
Absolutely.
best optimum, because
Absolutely.
they're being embraced, they're being accepted, and they're
Yeah.
being valued.
Yeah.
So that is so good.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, I mean, honestly, Azim, I think I could speak to you all day, like all day, every day. And I'm so thankful for you being here today because you've shared so many gems. And I am confident the audience will be able to take so much from this. But even for me, as someone growing on my journey, like I'm mentally writing notes, like I need to be taking this on board and continually being my true authentic self and building and cultivating relationships with people to build that sponsorship
Yes.
and be in an environment that you genuinely feel safe.
Yes.
And if you can't necessarily find that, could you find whether it be an ERG group or individuals who will literally support you and uplift you throughout your journey? So yeah, it's been really, really powerful. And I'm confident that there's going to be so many people in the audience who resonate with this. So thank you. And just as we close, I would love to ask a final question. So if you can leave one message for the next generation of Black women coming into tech, what would it be?
So I think my lasting message would definitely be, and I know for everyone it will take a different, level of time to maybe get there, but it's about shifting from feeling like you're working to survive, to one of, finding avenues and ways of really belonging so that you can thrive in your career. And, even if you're invited to spaces, shape it when you get there. Don't take on that tokenistic, invite that sometimes can be the case. Actually think about, okay, what do I want to get out of this time that I'm going to be in this space? And so, when you think about that, then it will help you to shape how you engage in that space and what you get out of it at the end of the day. So, yeah, shifting from survival to feeling like you really belong and then enabling you to thrive to your best ability.
I feel like a superwoman after that. Like that is a mic drop moment. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so good. And honestly, it's been such a pleasure. And to the audience, really, we really appreciate you being part of this conversation. And
Thank you.
one thing that we really want with this series, because it is new to the Women in Tech Forum, is if there's anything that resonates with you, if there's a line that Ezim said that was like, woof, like that, I need to be share it. Like let's get this episode and let's get this podcast series out there. Like repost, share, tag somebody, because this is these are the voices that we need to get out there. Ezim is an incredible woman in the tech space, and
Thank you.
yeah, like so many gems were shared, and this needs to be circulated. And I would also add to the audience, please follow Ezim on platforms such as, are you on, so I know you're on LinkedIn, any other
Yes.
platforms?
LinkedIn from a career perspective is great. Do add me. I tend to accept most people. And if I can get back to you, if you drop me a message, I will. I think with some of the organizations I've worked with, sometimes it's led to being inundated with emails, but I do try to get back to everybody. So so LinkedIn, you'll find me Ezim Ezea on there. And yes, let's connect and feel free to ask me any questions.
Perfect. Get connected. So thank you so much. Thank you, Ezim, for being an amazing guest. We really appreciate it and are blessed by your presence today, your gems, your knowledge. And final thing for the audience, stay tuned for the next episode of Elevating Black Women in Tech, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.